Let's have some fun on this Friday episode. It's time for a mailbag.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. He writes for Inside the Huskies of Fan Nation Sports Illustrated. I'm the site editor over with Huskies Wire. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. So, Lars, before we jump into this mailbag episode, just a quick programming note. So we've been teasing a special guest on Monday on social media. We will be having former strength coach Ron McKeefery on the show on Monday, and we're mentioning that now. So make sure you set the notifications and everything. Make sure you tune in for that. But for audio only listeners, we are actually transitioning to a new distribution platform on Monday. So that episode will still be released that day. It'll just come out a little bit later. So stay tuned. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us wherever you follow us on social media, and we'd be more than happy to help you out. And with that being said, Lars, let's jump into this mailbag, where the first thing that we should definitely cover is we got a whole host of questions about the offensive line. So apologies if we don't read yours exactly. We're going to cover this just all in one question. And the best way to go about this is from SoCal Salty, where he asks offensive line targets for the spring portal period. Something that I wrote about a little bit over on Huskies Wire, where the two big ones that are standing out right now are both from SMU. They're both American Athletic Conference first and second teamers. The first teamer is tackle Marcus Bryant, and the second teamer is center Branson Hickman, where both those guys would be grad transfers, 1-year starters, and I think that they would both be great fits along this offensive front.
Yeah, I completely agree. And again, it's worth noting that kids can announce they're going to enter the portal, or they are entering the portal, but they can't actually be contacted until they officially enter the portal when that period opens in April. But it's still kind of good for teams to kind of see who's going to be in the portal, because to our point about Branson, that's kind of the one for me where if you could only pick one of the two, that's the one for me, because you have Drew as a party, you have some options at tackle. Again, it's not great, right? I'm not saying you don't take anybody at tackle, but I'm saying there's enough kind of options there to make it work. When you look at center, I mean, aside from if Landon Hatchett was healthy,
there you go.
Then it's not a discussion, right? Then you just want some extra depth, and maybe you take a backup, kind of 5th-year, 1-year guy just to give you some added depth, knowing that Landon's going to be your guy for the future. But without that guarantee, you need a 5th-year experienced guy, or at least that's kind of more ideal, especially with a 5th-year, 6th-year quarterback with Will Rogers. You don't want him snapping to a redshirt sophomore that's never played a game before, unless your name is Parker Brailsford, which I doubt that's going to happen at this point. So, with that being said, that's the only redshirt freshman exception there.
Right.
But I do think both of them are going to get a lot of attention. I do think Hickman has a better chance of ending in Washington.
So I agree with you there. And let's kind of couple that in with a couple other questions we got along the offensive line, where it's how many transfers are there going to be? And is it concerning that they're going to need to rely heavily on transfer portal depth along the offensive line this spring? So Jedd Fisch answered the first part of the question during his signing day press conference, where he said 4 or 5 transfers is most likely what there's going to be. And then the second part is from Anthony Hale, where he said, are you concerned with cohesion along the offensive line? And is it concerning to rely on the transfer portal for some of this depth? No and no, I would say personally, where, especially if you get both SMU guys, there's a little bit of chemistry there already. But then we've seen offensive line coach and offensive coordinator Brendan Carroll do a really good job at helping those guys all work in sync during his time at Arizona. That was a really good offensive line that he was able to mentor and work with down there. So I wouldn't necessarily be very concerned about that, where it kind of just gives you a fresh start, where, maybe two or three of the offensive linemen are going to be guys that are already around this spring. And then just bringing in, for example, with the way we're talking about this right now, the 2 SMU guys, there are ways to make that work, and you still have a lot of time for these guys to work together and gel. So, come September 2nd, or the date of the first game is, there's not going to be any issues.
Yeah, I would again say no and no for a slightly different reason, because the only other option is you sign a bunch of freshmen and see what happens there. I mean, there's no other option or I guess option C, which is not even applicable at this point, is you just take the bodies you got and hope for the best, right? Like the ones you already have on the roster. Or maybe you flip a defensive lineman. I can't even think of who a candidate would be at this point in time. Much the reverse MJLA, right? Where you take a defensive lineman and put them over the offense. You can do that every now and then. But most of those guys are guys that are either walk-ons or backups that aren't probably going to start, but maybe can provide you with some decent depth, which does solve one problem. But I don't think and also again, it's the first year with Jedd, right? I think that it's a yes answer if it's 2 or 3 years down the line, right? If next year and the year after that you're still going for 4 and 5 portal offensive linemen, because then that just tells me you're not developing anybody.
Exactly.
But in this situation, you need the portal. If you don't go to the portal and get guys, you're being negligent in your evaluation and kind of how you're coaching this team, because you can't tell me that you roll into this fall camp with this exact same line. So no matter what, you're going to have to get some transfers. The key will be how many are staggered, right? Do you get let's say Branson Hickman as a 1-year center, but then you get 2 or 3 redshirt sophomores. I mean, there was an offensive lineman that transferred from Northwestern to Arizona after the season that has not followed Jedd Fisch up since. But again, it's one of those where he hadn't played at Northwestern, was a redshirt freshman. So he's a long-term kind of option that you could add in as a transfer. That could be a potential as well. And that's how you get around signing a freshman. You add basically a bonus year to that and say, hey, we're going to get a redshirt freshman who hasn't played, but we can kind of build up that depth. And that means we don't have to take 6 in the class. We can take 4 in a class or something like that. So I think there's a number of ways to make it work in the portal where you're not just taking like the basketball version of 5 grad transfers and saying, all right, these are our starters.
Right. I agree there. So let's move on to our good buddy everydayer Doug Robinson, who says, how close to the unexpected success of the 2022 team can the 2024 team achieve? What would a successful season look like given the Big Ten schedule, where right now a lot of it's going to depend on the offensive line. So we can probably go pretty quickly with this one, where I don't think we're going to see an 11-win team like we did with the 2022 squad, but I wouldn't be surprised with 9 or 10 wins, including a bowl game there, where right now the over-under is set for 7.5 wins for this team for the upcoming season. And, we talked about some of the tough schedules that you're going to see. Michigan, Oregon, USC, those are going to be the real toss-up games right there. Going to Iowa is not going to be easy, where 8-4, 9-3 is certainly achievable. But again, that's all going to depend on the success of the offensive line, because when you look at the way the schedule stacks up, 5-0 is not out of the question for this team right out of the gate.
And because of that, all you need is 3 more wins in the last 6, 7, 8 weeks of the season. There's I have a hard time believing, especially the way Jedd built Arizona last year. And again, that's year 3 in Arizona, year 1 at Washington. That's the difference there. But I have a hard time seeing if Jedd is able to go 5-0. I have a hard time seeing them go 2-6 the rest of the way, 2-4 the rest of the year. To me, that just kind of doesn't. I see him going 8-4 with a bowl win at 9-4. I could see that, where you're getting to 9, maybe you get to 10. And again, here's the other thing: we're also not factoring in what happens to other teams. Now, again, Michigan's probably going to be really good. Other schools are going to be really good in the Big Ten. But injuries play a factor. Guys transfer out in the spring period. Maybe it's a surprise that, And I mean, think about Oregon. You got Dylan Gabriel and a couple of those guys competing for that quarterback job, right? And, so Dante Moore, right? So there's UCLA's got UCLA. Oregon has got some options there. USC, Miller Moss. Again, so some of these teams where it's like, oh, hey, USC's gonna be good. These are gonna be. It's like, okay, well. You could say the same thing about Arizona. Arizona's somehow going to be ranked in the top 10 next season, or top 25 next season, and Washington might not be. So it's like it's kind of subjective, and I would say 8 wins is probably their I don't want to say floor or ceiling, but break even.
It should be the expectation.
Exactly. There we go. Yep.
So, Lars, with that being said, let's move right along with some of these more questions after some big news. And that big news is we have a new sponsor, and it's our friends over at Ibata. Do you love making money but also love spending money? Now you can make money while you spend it every time you shop with Ibata. Ibata is a free app that gives you the most cash back every time you shop on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies to toys. So you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibata user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip. So you can buy that flight you've been eyeing, the game you're dying to go to, or the fancy dinner you've been craving. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much with Ibata. Just add your offers in the app, upload your receipt, and you get real cash that you can cash out to your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. Join the over 50 million users and earn cash back every time you shop from over 2,700 brands and retailers, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. Right now, Ibata is offering our listeners $5 for just for trying Ibata by using the code LOCKEDONCollege when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play and download the free Ibata app and start using cashback and use code LOCKEDONCollege. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONCollege. Let's move right along here with some of these more questions because we got a lot of good ones. So we apologize if we don't get to all of them. One that I think, we're gonna jump back and forth. We got some fun questions. Let's go to real quick one here from Batista Bomb. What's each of your favorite teriyaki spots in Seattle? For me personally, I gotta go with I know it's a little bit of a chain over here on the east side. I love teriyaki. Their spicy garlic chicken just does it for me every time. That's where I'd have to go.
So, living in West Seattle, there's a lot of options we can go with here. I'm going to pick Nico Teriyaki only because great family, good little area. And the nice thing is you can park easily, walk over, do whatever, and you got the West Seattle Village. Not a walking area if you want to walk around. And, man, they load that teriyaki. It is.
Yeah. Close second for me is Teriyaki Bowl in downtown Bellevue. I always do the chicken and beef from there. Oh, that's fantastic, especially after a workout. Oh, can't go wrong. All right, let's actually jump over real quickly here to Batista Bomb's other question, which is a basketball question. So we'll switch gears real fast. Do you think we would have won the Pac-12 in 2018 if Lorenzo Romar stayed as the head coach to develop his recruiting class? Seems like Hopkins pulled a DeBoer and won with Romar's recruits and now hasn't been able to do anything in 5+ years after. Lars, go for it.
I don't care. The answer is still no. Yeah. Like they're but first rate, love the handle. Batista Bomb, love that. But with that being said, go look at what Romar has done at Pepperdine. Right. Like go look at what it's not been that great. And I mean, again, there's going to now come the question with just like with Romar, with Hopkins, where, okay, well, do you fire Hopkins and risk losing Zoom Diallo? Well, Jen Cohen fired Romar and lost Michael Porter Jr. and Jonte Porter and all that. But again, you can't bet on one just to say, hey, give me another 3 or 4 years. Like we saw what happened with Markelle Fultz. Hopkins has got 4 or 5 grad transfers this year and still not putting it together. So,
and on top of that, who's to say that Michael Porter, and it sucks to say this, you never want to say this, who's to say he doesn't get hurt and misses 95% of the season up here in Washington? You can't ever bet on anything like that. So let's jump over to Josh Chin here, who says you could choose one player from the 2023 team to play for the 2024 team. Who would it be and why? Specifically addressing some of the missing pieces for that are on the team today. Lars, do you want to go first? Because I've got a couple of answers, and I want to see where you go, and that's going to, depend on where I go here.
It's a good question. I'm torn between Parker Brailsford and Roger Rosengarten.
Yeah, that's where I thought you'd go.
Because I'm thinking Troy's gone. You just got to you lose one of the two tackles no matter what, right? Troy probably should go play guard in the NFL, first round pick, all that. Roger was a potential to come back. I was on record saying he wasn't going to come back. I never thought he would. Parker would be kind of the one, loss of dang because of the coaching change and all that. If you could pull anybody from that roster back, it would be Parker. And I think that's also for stability on the offensive line. That solves a number of problems. I would say Parker Brailsford.
That's a good one. I knew you were going to go offensive line, so I kind of wanted to go a different direction here. Give me Rome Odunze, where I'm just imagining a top two of Jeremiah Hunter and Rome Odunze. And Will Rogers would just have the time of his life throwing to those guys. I think that would be so much fun for so many reasons. So let's keep jumping around here because we got a couple of good ones. Let's go to Brian Piercy here, who's got a two-parter. Your go-to position for Road to Glory player, and what low-level school are you going to start at before eventually becoming the head coach of the Washington Huskies in dynasty mode in EA Sports College Football 25? I'll start with the go-to position player. Let's go back and forth on that part, and then we'll jump over to part two. I'm boring. I usually pick a quarterback, but I will say one time when playing NCAA 14, I decided to just make a 7-foot-tall, 400-pound running back with just 99 speed. And it was so much fun, man. That was just an absolute blast to be able to do. But with that being said, being just quarterback is probably the easiest because, in my opinion, there's nothing more frustrating than playing as a running back or playing as a wide receiver and just being out there for a couple of plays where nothing is going to go your way. So just being out there and being able to control everything as a quarterback just makes the game go by so much faster and so much more fun that way.
So you're right, but I'm going to take just for the sake of discussion here, I'm taking the other side of that. I'm going to say safety because the one that because again, same thing, right? Where if you're a defensive lineman or interior lineman, okay, yeah, maybe if you put, Aaron Donald level talent on that thing, maybe you get to go.
Sure.
But when you're playing the role of the honey badger, you can make the picks, you can blitz, you can do a number of different things, and you feel like you're literally just running the show on defense. And it's like maybe linebacker would be a happy medium option, but I kind of like safety because I'll do the 2021 UW Jimmy Lake defensive playing 30 yards off the ball, making sure I don't get beat deep, and then having some random blitzer come off the corner like Jabbar Muhammad this past season, just blitzing from the far side, Mish blitzing from the near side, just absolutely ridiculous defense. But yeah, no, that if not quarterback, to your point, I would pick safety.
Yeah. So part two, where I mean, this is no disrespect to any of my friends that still live out in the Boston area because it's not a low-level school, but it's not necessarily a high-level football program. I want to rebuild Boston College, where I think that'd be a lot of fun. That's the area that I lived in when I was living out there. And, it was really cool because we were out there when Clemson was, at the top of their game and everything. And that program it's really cool when you talk about things like the red bandana night and everything, where I think that rebuilding that program and making it a powerhouse, we're kind of back where it was in the Matt Ryan days and everything, that would be a lot of fun. So give me the BC Eagles. I'd have a lot of fun with that.
I think you know where I'm going with this.
Do you really want to say it?
Because it's not a low-level school. It's a fun school. And if you run the right system, you can get a certain type of recruit. And this is a slight tangent here. But just
you should probably say the name of the school though.
Washington State. And so because in that one where I see, this is what I want to do when I see NCAA 25. They better have some they better have some NIL that just shifts around, because let me tell you, there's certain guys in Pullman you can just throw like $300K to them and just say, you know what, you're gonna run this for like 2 years, call it even.
Sure.
And also, I will say the schedule, the old. I mean, as I showed you before, playing NCAA 14, the amount of times where we'd have Luke Falk or Connor Holiday run a quarterback sneak for 75 yards. Oh, great times. It's inverting the Washington State tradition. That's what makes it fun.
Lars, let's take one more break real fast, and then let's get to some more fun questions here. Right after we send a message to our good friends over at FanDuel, because you can get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel is an official sportsbook partner of the NBA, and, we were talking about that Husky win total earlier. It's set at 7.5 right now on FanDuel. So, if you're feeling confident in Jedd Fisch and this team, you can go slam that over on FanDuel. Maybe make yourself a little bit of money. Lars, it's time for one of our favorite accounts in terms of being an everydayer and just fantastic name. And it's Chris Peterson's burner, who's got a 3-parter. So we're going to take this one at a time. What games on Washington's schedule next year do you see potentially being overlooked? And I'm going to go with the obvious one here right off the bat and say Rutgers, where, going out to the East Coast, the travel is going to be tough. And, it's not always the best program, but that travel difference could mean a lot. So give me Rutgers.
So I remember, what was it, 2017, 16, 17?
Yep, 2017.
Somewhere in that ballpark where they went out to Rutgers. So that's another one. I'm going to say, we kind of touched on it a little bit. I would say Iowa, just because that's a game where you kind of just got to throw certain things out because Iowa's defense is going to be one thing. And we got robbed of the Ryan Grubb versus Kirk Ferentz experiment, just to see how those contrasting offenses work. But almost similar, you get Jedd Fisch. This is basically the same sort of thing where it's like, can Iowa's defense shut them down? How can you? Because that's a precursor to Michigan. That's kind of Iowa gets you to test yourself. Think, okay, how close are we to handling a defense?
Well, remember, Iowa actually comes after Michigan on the schedule. That's their next matchup after. So that's going to be really interesting. Part 2 here is, which true freshman do you expect to play meaningful snaps next season? I'll let you go first with this one.
Good question. True freshman in this past class. That's kind of the hard part, because if you think about it, Adam Muhammad probably shouldn't. I mean, why is the receiver blanking me?
Audric Harris.
Audric Harris could sneak in there a little bit. There's some on defense. I feel like I'm missing one on defense.
I've got one on each side of the ball. Yeah, Kamari House maybe.
Because it's a holdover. I'm trying to think of some names here. I'm like, okay, well, there's some guys I think on both sides of the ball. So yeah, I would say those three, just mainly the latter two.
So I've got one on each side of the ball. On defense, Rashawn Clark. That would be the name for me. Where, there are a lot of nice safeties where I know we haven't talked about Tristan Dunn nearly enough, where he's definitely going to be moving back to the safety position. I know we like Mikel Esteen, but there's just not a lot of experience depth in that room. And with so many young safeties now where, we saw Vincent Holmes make the move to wide receiver, but there's still Peyton Waters, there's still Raheem Wright, and Rashawn Clark. One of those guys is going to have to step up and play. I think it's going to be Clark, local kid, 4-star prospect. That would be my pick. And then on the offense, I'm torn between the other two receivers, actually, where one of Justice Williams or Jason Robinson is going to play. I'm leaning towards Justice Williams right now due to his size, where I really like Jason Robinson's route running ability. I like a lot of things that he does. I just think that when Jedd Fisch kind of looks at the 3 wide receivers in the room, that Justice Williams is going to be the one that's going to stand out, not only physically, but just with some of the things that he's going to be able to do on the outside, because that actually leads into the next part of this question from CP's burner, where he says, breakout redshirt freshman for next season. And I've got a fun one here for you, and it's Keith Reynolds, where that's kind of where I would lean to Justice Williams of the 3 wide receivers, because I was really, really impressed with Keith Reynolds in the fall. I thought that his athleticism, his ability after the catch, and just physicality wise, he doesn't necessarily, where he was listed at 5'10", 150 when he got to Washington, but he's definitely put on a lot of weight since then. And it's all muscle, where he just looks really fluid in some of his movements as well. And the more I was able to watch him over practice from fall camp, and then watching him warm up and everything, I think that he's going to be a guy behind Giles Jackson in the slot that is going to be more productive than people think this coming season.
I that's not a bad one at all. I'm just thinking off the top of my head, going back to what you're saying about the safeties. Give me probably, it's one of the 3 corners, and honestly, out of the 3, I want to see Curly Reed, because that dude is. I think Leroy Bryant is kind of the best of the 3, but when I say best, it's kind of like what do you want?
It's slim,
right? Because it's like when you look at Curly Reed, dude's built like a brick outhouse. Like there's that dude has so much potential to me. Just looking at what he could do in a number of different roles, he's gonna break out in one position or another.
Right. I agree with you there. So let's get into a couple other fun ones, because I was actually going to go with Curly Reed if I went on the defensive side there. He was probably a close second for me, just because he fits that prototype of what looks like John Richardson is looking for in a defensive back. So Trevor Mueller, our good buddy, says favorite former Mariners/Red Sox player, where I didn't know if he meant both, or they had to play with both, because, I would have to give a shout out to Heathcliff Slocum, shout out for, getting Derek Lowe and Jason Varitek in that deal. I know that might hurt some Mariner fans, but I'm going to give you both here. Or actually, no. because I would just spend 10 minutes talking about Felix Hernandez because he's my favorite pitcher of all time. But I got to go with Adrian Beltre because not only did I love getting a chance to watch him in Boston and here in Seattle, but growing up in Los Angeles, I got to watch him during his time with the Dodgers as well. And he's so much fun. Love seeing that he got into the Hall of Fame. Adrian Beltre is just one of my favorite players of all time.
And his son is a future Husky.
Yeah, that too. There you go.
Good plug. Good kid. I like that one. So I'm actually going to double down on this. I'm going to give you 2 former Mariners and Red Sox that played for both teams.
Okay.
Mike Carp.
I love Mike Carp.
And Pokey Reese.
Yes. Fantastic.
Because MVP 2005. Pokey Reese, when he was finally signed with the Mariners, was like, it was the best. It was Sean Figgins before Sean Figgins. It was Sean Figgins.
Right.
Yeah, like light, if you will.
That's a good one.
But then we also got to give a honorable mention shout out to Big Pop, David Ortiz.
Oh yeah, 100%.
David Arias.
I didn't know if that one would count because it was just single A with the Mariners, where huge shout out there, but I didn't know if that one would count, so I just decided to not go that direction. But yeah, we can't have this discussion without mentioning him.
And I gotta say, we can't have this discussion without mentioning the fact that the Mariners did not want to trade Rafael Soriano, a relief pitcher and a B-level prospect, to the Red Sox for Manny Ramirez. I will never forgive that.
Oh no! I'm so sad about this. Can't you tell?
Yeah, we got Horacio Ramirez instead from Atlanta. We went from Manny Ramirez to Horacio Ramirez.
I'm so broken up about all of this. Bummer. Remind me to tell you more about that time that I was at the Red Sox World Series parade in 2018 and at Game 2 of the World Series. But that's a story for another day. Coach V's got a fun one here. Yeah, keep playing that world's smallest violin over there. What's the one ad you would make to the concessions at Husky Stadium? That's a fantastic question. Where obviously we have a little bit of a different experience being up in the press box, where shout out to Troy Dannon for the final game of the year for the Apple Cup. He had a nice little spread out there for us, where if I had to make one ad, just to the concessions in general, because I love walking around, when we're down there in the concourse before the game starts and we're going back up to the box. I love smelling the garlic fries. I love me some Ivar's halibut and chips personally. I'm not a big seafood guy, but that's one that I really like. But if I had to go in one direction, it's so tough. But I would have to go with just a nice pretzel, where I'm sure that there are some pretzels, but if you just add like an Auntie Anne's somewhere around there, that would just, I would spend so much money before going back up to the press box. I would probably drop like $40 on a couple of like pretzel dogs and just a whole bunch of other things, and just bring that all back up and make everybody really, really mad at me for not buying anything for anybody else.
You're going to love those games at East Lansing, because that's one of their hot ticket items in the press box. And when I say hot ticket items, I couldn't say that with any more sarcasm, because you either get a hot dog, a pretzel, or I think that's it. Maybe like a bag of chips.
Hey, that's all I need personally, where I love all that. Like Lars, I know you didn't get the chance to go down with us to New Orleans or to Houston, but just quick highlight of some of the items that we got down there that were amazing. In New Orleans, they put out a fantastic pregame meal spread for us. And one thing that with all the media meals that they gave us was just this incredible jambalaya that it was amazing. Just thinking about that was really great. And then in Houston, one thing that was awesome, where they put out this nice Mexican pregame spread up in the press box, and they had enchiladas, they had tacos, they had a whole bunch of different things. But one of the best parts about it was this nacho bar that they put out with this really delicious white queso, a whole bunch of other things. And between that and the Bluebell ice cream that they had up there, I was in heaven.
That's nice. That's nice. That's nice. I'm not hating. I'm thinking back.
No, I know. I'm just making you hungry at this point.
No, well, I'm just thinking back to the burnt brisket that was served at the Alamo Bowl press conference, the bowl game during the game, which I did not touch, and apparently made everybody else sick because I was like, yeah, I'm not touching that brisket. Like I know better than to touch Lincoln Riley's brisket. Like.
Hey, if only, and it's a good thing Scott Huff's staying around. Where maybe we'll get him to make us something on that Traeger that he's got. So let's get to one more here. Where this is a fun question. It's from Grady Olson, who says, "Is it possible Coach Fisch would possibly have a Husky Combine event like Chris Peterson used to have to test the players in Combine style events? I remember there were some fun things like the Husky Olympics that they used to do. Where can't rule anything out." I know Lars and I were having this discussion off air a couple weeks ago where we really wanted to have a media combine like the Seahawks were doing, where I think that would be a lot of fun personally as somebody who likes to go lift weights and play basketball in the morning. But I think that's definitely a possibility. It was fun social media content too, which Jedd Fisch has shown that he definitely enjoys.
Yeah, I think that there's probably some, Jedd got Gronk back to Arizona. So I think he had him at their spring game, flew in on a helicopter or something like that. So yeah, I'm pretty sure Jedd's going to find some ways to get creative here.
Absolutely. Lars, as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to all the viewers for tuning in. That was really fun. We had a lot of fun with those. And, over the course of the off season, we're definitely going to try to get another mailbag or two in there, where it's appropriate. And again, one final reminder, as we said at the beginning of the show, just say it one more time. Monday's episode for audio only listeners will be delayed a little bit just as part of a software transition. So no reason to worry. But again, if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to help you out in any way, shape, or form. And remember, on Monday's episode, we will be featuring former UW strength coach Ron McKeefrey. We've got a whole bunch of great questions lined up for him, and we know it's going to be a fantastic conversation. And until then, and to make sure you don't miss anything, make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating this channel with new content every single day. So please make sure you hit that like button, leave a comment down below. And if you're audio only, please leave us a 5-star review, as it all does really help us out. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will talk to you on Monday.